Welcome, everybody. My name is Jeff Fowler with the Apartment Owners Association. In this live stream, we're going to be talking about DSTs and how to use those to and everything. But I know some of you may be on, maybe you joined because you're thinking that this is going to be about those urgent updates to the criminal reports in California. That's coming at 12:30. If you didn't know about that one, you need to see it if you own rental property here in California. And that one will be great. That's coming up. We also have some other events coming up. 14th, move in and move out process. 15th, same thing. On the 14th, it's in Buena Park. On the 15th, it's in Santa Clara. And then we have the Landlording Power Conference that's coming up in San Diego on the 21st. 7 different seminars, and it will be kicked off with Franco Simone, landlord tenant attorney, and he's going to be talking about tenant screening. And this is, a lot of you are going to be needing to fill a vacancy sometime soon. And so we really encourage you just to stay up. There's different things that have changed for sure, like how much you can even take in a security deposit. And depending on where you're at, there's even more changes. And so keep up with all of that. AOA is really here to help you stay in the know, because what you don't know could really, really cost you big time. And we really desire you to be successful, and we want you to get the best tenants possible, for sure. And then also August 22nd, we have the AOA $1 Million Trade Show coming up. So those are all things that are coming up here, and just so thankful for you. And it's so cool. Like, you guys do these reviews, and this one from Celeste, she really nailed this one. She said, Rochelle is absolutely amazing. And I like how she makes the distinction here. And I just want to read this because it's really true. Although she's not an attorney, nor does she give legal advice, she is extremely knowledgeable about the Apartment Owners Association landlords, the do's and the don'ts as it pertains to being compliant. So thank you, Celeste. That's just right. Some people, they think that we are giving legal advice, but it's really not. We're giving you more general advice, but it is going to help you be compliant. And that hotline is available for you if you're a member. And so we hope you utilize that. So we want to thank Inland Securities Corporation today for sponsoring this event. And they're the largest sponsor of DSTs in the country. They've been in business for over 50 years. And you just see just such an incredible story that they have that you'll hear more about. Over $4 billion in DSTs over the last 13 years, which is just remarkable. And they have a uniquely customer-first culture that they try and to put into everything that they're doing. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with the managing director from Inland Securities, and he's been in this business since 2008, I believe. And so it's my pleasure to introduce to you Charles Jensen.
Jeff, it's a pleasure to be here again today on your show, and our presentation is called DSTs for Dummies. So the idea here is this is a nice 101 course into the Delaware Statutory Trust, and you're going to walk away with the basics of 1031. We'll go over the basic rules there. We'll talk about Inland for a minute as well, our company, where we came from, but you're going to really understand and truly understand the Delaware Statutory Trust, which may be a potential solution for your exchange needs. So I'm going to pull up a couple slides here to get started on the presentation. Presentation today is called Utilizing DSTs in a 1031 Exchange, or DSTs for Dummies, as we call it, right? And before we get started, too, this presentation is talking about the Delaware Statutory Trust, which is a securitized product. So, make sure you read your private placement memorandum. There's a lot of disclaimers in here where we know that past performance is not indicative of future results. We always recommend to read your risk factors as well. Usually about 50 plus pages of risk factors that go over all the things to consider before you invest into a Delaware statutory trust. So as we get started, I know pretty much everyone here is from California on the webinar today. And you can't say the word inland without thinking about the Inland Empire of California. A lot of folks think it's inland, we're the Inland Empire somewhere in the desert, but it's not true. Actually started by 4 Chicago teachers that met in the 1960s and bought a piece of land as their first investment. So in the land business, inland. These 4 former teachers pictured here, they actually met in the same teaching fraternity in Chicago at the same school when they're in college. And they realized they're not going to strike it rich teaching school. Decided to band together to go teach at the same school after college because they had summers, they had weekends, they had breaks in the middle of the day where they could buy some real estate and form a real estate group. So they ended up in South Chicago after school, and they had access to one phone. No cell phones back then, right? No Instagram, no Facebook, none of that back in the 60s. So they had access to one phone the entire day, and that was the faculty lounge. Now imagine a faculty lounge back in the 60s. A corded phone, few couches strewn together, people smoking cigarettes. Like there's no privacy anywhere in these lounges back then. And they started calling realtors. They found their first deal, which was a piece of land in between two buildings. They came up with $4,000 between the four of them. They bought this land with a construction loan and built a 4-unit apartment building. Shortly thereafter, the completion, they doubled their initial investment. And guess what? All the teachers that heard them talking on the phone said, "Can we invest into your next deal? We need extra money as well." This got bigger and bigger. After 5 years of teaching, went full-time into real estate in 1967. And they incorporated in Oak Brook, Illinois, just a stone's throw from McDonald's original headquarters. And that was in 1968. So through the 70s, 80s, 90s, until today, they bought more land and built apartments, did retail, office, industrial, medical, storage, assisted living facilities, hotels, you name it. Now, the great part of the story is those four teachers that came from lower to middle income class homes became the biggest owner of Walmart nationwide by 1989. We owned the land and the buildings, and we leased it back to the Walton Family Trust. So rags to riches story. A lot of them became billionaires in the 80s. And the best part of the story is 3 of the 4 are still at the company today and alive. They went into different positions. One became CEO, one became head of acquisitions, the other head of marketing, as well as chief legal counsel. So quite a story, and also being the top DST sponsor since 2004 when these first came out. So been around a long time, and we're happy to be here today. Before we get started too, there's a lot of DST companies in the market today. Some of these are really solid companies. Some of them, we call them 2 guys in a pickup truck. Be very thoughtful about the companies you work with in DST, because some smaller companies will try to put a higher distribution, a higher monthly cash flow out there to you as an incentive because they don't have a lot of marketing or experience behind them. So watch out for these tricky things that companies do. I always like to bring this to people's attention is some companies are using reserves to supplement cash flow. There's a reserve account for a rainy day in case something happens or a rent disruption, or changing carpet in apartments to wood floors to up the rents. But some companies are using that to subsidize their distribution, which is not going to last forever. It's not a good way to run a business, right? They could have aggressive assumptions where interest rates will remain high over the 10-year period. We know they're going to fluctuate. That inflation will be above 7 to 10% the next 10 years. We know that's probably not true. It's going to move around. So watch out for that. The rent increase assumption will give them a higher distribution. They might be buying low quality assets or underfunding property reserves or prepaying or reserving for normal expenses. So watch out for these things. They say in real estate, Jeff, I'm sure you hear this all the time. The 3 most important things about real estate are location, location, location. DST world, it's all about sponsor, sponsor, sponsor. Make sure they have a track record. Ask them, how many full cycle deals have you done? How long have you been around? What's your standing in this business? Make sure they're a good company, because as you'll understand through the presentation, that who you invest with is everything. So 1031s been around since 1921, over 100 years. And this allows anyone to take any property held for investment or business use. And if you exchange it to another property held for investment or business use utilizing Section 1031, you can defer all of your taxes. Say you bought a $100,000 property in California years and years ago, worth $1 million today. If you use a 1031 exchange, you can defer all those taxes, have that full $1 million working for you, go into your next property that goes to $2 million, maybe, hypothetically. Exchange that again, and it goes up, hopefully, right? And you can exchange, and over again. You can swap till you drop, defer till you die, but upon death is a step up in basis to fair market value. What I'm saying is the taxes go away upon death, and it goes to your heirs at the current market value. So the beauty here is under current tax law, you can defer, and then die, and you can get rid of the taxes utilizing Section 1031 exchange if you use it that way. Now, Jeff, I'm sure you've seen this too. The Section 1031 exchange has been under attack lately from the White House in their new budget proposal. They want to limit it to $1 million per couple per year, or $500,000 per individual per year. We don't think that's going to pass, but just be aware of that. Idea being is if you want to do an exchange, you may want to do it now in the next year or two before there are any attacks to exchanges, but we think we're going to be okay. Just want to bring it to everyone's attention to be thoughtful of this. So what happens if you pay the tax? A lot of accountants will tell you, just pay the tax. And I think sometimes they just don't understand that DST is available or that exchanges are not as hard as you may think. Who wants to pay a potential 40% tax, right? Does no one justice. So imagine you're selling $1 million property. You're gonna be hit with 4 major taxes if you pay that tax. It's not just your federal tax. You got depreciation recapture. At Inland, we call this the hidden tax. It's the tax that everyone seems to forget about until you talk to your financial advisor, your realtor, your accountant. What happens is the IRS can claw back any tax benefits they gave you up to 25% upon the realization of the tax. So imagine you're selling a $1 million property. There's $100,000 of recapture there in the bold box. I'll kind of hover around it with my cursor. You're going to get a tax for $25,000 on $100,000, right? There's the federal tax on gain, which is the highest tax at 20%, or $200,000 on the million. The largest tax is the second largest tax is the state level. Now, I kind of laugh here because when you look here, it says 5.1%. This is a national presentation. 5.1%, believe it or not, is the average of all 50 states' tax rates in one tax number. We know in California, the height is over 13%, and we know it could be going up to 14.2 if the state gets their way. So forget 51,000, it could be as high as 133,000 at 13.3%, right? You also have the Medicare tax, that Obamacare Medicare at 3.8%, which is applicable to investment real estate. It could be 38,000 on the million. So as a whole, on a state average, you may be left with that $1 million being only left with $686,000. In California, it's even less because the higher tax rate in California could be closer to $600,000. So a potential 40% hit. Who wants that, right? Utilizing Section 1031 exchange defers all of these taxes, and that full $1 million is working for you at the end. It's almost like the 401k of real estate. You're deferring your taxes. You're getting income stream, especially for the silver hair tsunami, the retiring generation that can get the tax benefits with the income without the hassle management under the DST, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Now, one of the major rules is when you sell your property, the funds have to go to a third-party qualified intermediary. What makes them qualified is it can't be your buddy down the street, can't be your personal attorney or your real estate agent or your banker. No one like that. It has to be impartial to you, because they may be tempted to backdate some of the federal timelines. So qualified intermediary, what makes them qualified is it's not someone that's doing business with you in the last couple of years. There's a lot of QIs out there. We know some great ones. Just feel free to reach out to me anytime on email or phone, and we can connect you with a great qualified intermediary if needed. So again, the funds go to the qualified intermediary upon the close of escrow, which starts a timeline. Now, if the funds end up at escrow, the general escrow account or your bank account, the exchange is blown. So it has to go to a qualified intermediary. They charge a fee per exchange. So day one on this federal timeline is when you close on your real estate and the funds go to the qualified intermediary. It starts a clock. You got 45 calendar days, includes weekends and holidays, in which to identify your replacement property. Under current law, you can take your one property and identify up to 3 properties under the 3 property rule. If you want to go 4 or more, you can utilize the 200% rule, which says if you sold that $1 million property, you can identify up to $2 million in real estate, right? So if you wanted to do, say, $100,000 condos in Indiana, that would work under this rule. So 45 days to find it, 180 to get it closed. So you got 6 months to close it. But what is harder? Ask yourself. 45 days is much harder in today's market. You got a lot of folks sitting back on their 2-3% mortgage rates that don't want to sell. The lack of inventory, which is keeping prices stable, but it keeps for a lack of property in the market today. A lot of folks listing property today are getting multiple offers pretty quickly because of the limited supply. But imagine this is you. You go to sell your property, and now you have the problem of finding that property in the next 45 days, identifying it. And I'm happy to tell you, through the Delaware Statutory Trust, we've bought the properties in advance. You don't have to worry about the 45 days because we're holding them in inventory, and you just select from a menu. We'll talk about that here in a minute as we go through the DST side, but keep in mind those rules. Now, not all properties are considered exchangeable. The property has to be held for investment or business use. So it can't be your personal residence unless you move out for a couple of years and you turn it into a rental property. But you can take, when we say like kind, it confuses folks. They think that means you have to go from multifamily to multifamily. It doesn't mean that. Or healthcare to healthcare. It does not mean that. All like kind means is you sell anything held for investment or business use and exchange into anything held for investment or business use. So you can go from a raw piece of land and exchange into an apartment building, apartments into healthcare, healthcare into self-storage. It doesn't matter. You can go from a residential rental into a commercial property. It doesn't matter. All it has to be is considered a like kind is investment to investment. Could be air rights above a building, water rights, mineral rights below a building. And there's something called a Delaware Statutory Trust. The DST was created by the IRS back in 2004 in the tax code. If you want to research this on your own, go into 2004-86 of the Internal Revenue Code on irs.gov. You'll find the Delaware Statutory Trust. It's basically the vehicle for your exchange journey. Think about, tax deferred vehicles, kind of like a Roth IRA, 401k, 403b. They're all the same thing. They gave you tax deferrals inside the vehicle. This is kind of like that, where it's just the vehicle for your exchange journey that can have one or more people in it going to one or more properties in this trust, this Delaware Statutory Trust. So doing a DST is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Step number 1, you sell your property via realtor. So we don't act as realtor. You got to find a good realtor. If you don't have one, we know a lot of them. I'm sure Jeff does too in the AOA. Have some great folks there. Sell your property. Step number 2, funds go to a qualified intermediary, which triggers the 45 days. Now, between step 2 and 3, a financial advisor is involved to help do paperwork and wire those funds into the Delaware Statutory Trust. So it's easy as 1, 2, 3, not a difficult thing to do. And we're happy to help with you anytime. Now, when you do a DST, the Delaware Statutory Trust is not right for anyone. No investment vehicle is right for everyone, right? You can't put a square peg in a round hole. So when we look at folks that are right typically for the DST, one or more of these has to really resonate with you, right? So these are the 6 major reasons people like to look toward a DST as their exchange journey. And the first one is access to high quality institutional grade properties in green. So the DSTs are unique. Say you're selling $1 million property in Los Angeles today. That's not really a lot of money anymore in the investment world. Doesn't really get that nice of a property. In fact, it probably gets you a property that's a bit run down, that needs some upkeep, pipes from the 1940s, 50s. I don't know. It could be older, right? So imagine you sell your $1 million property and you pull those dollars with up to 500 other people. So imagine we got my 100,000, we got your $1 million, someone else's, we got Jeff's 10 million times aggregated by 500 people. Now we're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars. Imagine what you could buy. Here's what you could buy. It could be ESPN's headquarters in Bristol, Connecticut. That's a past inland property. It's a Delaware Statutory Trust. AT&T's headquarters is an inland property. It's a Delaware Statutory Trust. Verizon's headquarters is a DST. It could be a FedEx facility, Amazon facility, student housing, apartments, healthcare, self-storage. Imagine getting access to these high-quality properties that only the ultra-wealthy have access to with your exchange dollars. You have access to those through the Delaware Statutory Trust or DST. The next thing is there's no management responsibilities. Imagine 500 people having a say in management. Be very difficult, right? We can't get people to agree upon anything in this country, right? Imagine 500 people deciding what color to paint the apartment building. It's not happening, right? So in a DST, Inland or the sponsor of the DST is the trustee of the trust. We do all the management. We handle all of the terrible T's of management are handled through the DST. It's a passive vehicle. So if a water heater breaks, we fix it. We handle the terrible T's, the tenants, the trash, toilets, termites of ownership that you deal with. In a DST, it's very passive. You get to do the things you like to do. Drive your Tesla, play tennis, time with the kids, travel, whatever you want to do. You could do in a Delaware statutory trust because it's a passive vehicle. I have 3 of these. Every first of the month, I get a direct deposit into my checking account or brokerage account, whatever account you want to go into. So there's monthly income, right? Monthly income, direct deposit typically. You get a monthly statement. You get a quarterly update on the property that talks about, the financials and all that. And at the end of the year, we give you a 1099. Now, we know when you go to do a 1031 exchange, that it's all tax deferred. The only thing you cannot fully defer is the income derived from the property, which is typically taxed at ordinary income. But what you can do is shelter a lot of that through the interest expense and depreciation. In this example, well, first off, you get a 1099, right? So these usually come on time. K1s are notoriously late. I think I got a K1 this year on April 15th. Sometimes they come later in the year. So 1099s simply come on time. It's the first good thing about this. But imagine you have 2.7% interest in the DST. You own 2.7% of the properties in the trust. Your rents were $77,808 in income. You got to report that on taxes, right? But you're offset by the interest expense on the loan of $32,694. Plus, also look at your depreciation, which is not calculated here, that follows you from deal to deal, right? So what I'm getting at is this situation minus depreciation, your $77,000 is only taxable at $41,000, right? So what I'm saying is if you're going to get 4.5%, 5% in a typical Delaware statutory trust today, it's going to feel more like 5, 6, 7, 8% depending on your tax rate, because there'll be a tax equivalent yield at the end. So for me, I put these on Schedule E. End of the year, my accountant takes my 3 different DSTs on Schedule E, where you put your rental income anyways, property A, B, and C. Here's my income, here's my interest expense, and we figure out the total number. So very easy to do. Diversification. In a Delaware statutory trust, a lot of times, you're going to be, a lot of times in any exchange, you're selling one property and you're looking for one property, especially in today's market with a limited inventory. In a DST, a lot of times you get diversification. So back to the slide. Sometimes you might have a DST that hypothetically has that one ESPN or that one Amazon or that one FedEx facility. But a lot of DSTs that we do are portfolios of properties. So hypothetically, imagine we hypothetically had 5 apartments in Florida in one DST portfolio. So your one investment, we get you ownership of 5 apartments hypothetically in Florida. It could be you're selling your one property and you're buying into a portfolio of 5 hospitals in Arizona, hypothetically in a DST, or hypothetically 30 storage facilities in Texas in a DST. So you see what I'm saying is imagine you use the 200% rule. You're selling that $1 million property in California. You could put $333,000 into 5 apartments in Florida, $333,000 into 5 hospitals in Arizona, and $333,000 into self-storage in Texas. You just went from one property, one city, and one state. Now you're in 40 properties in 3 states, in 3 asset classes. Are you diversified? I would say yes. So it's a great way to diversify, a great way to spread out the risk. And the intent is to sell those apartments as a lump sum to an institutional player, sovereign wealth fund, a REIT, pension fund of some sort. There's a lot of folks that want to buy this stabilized income. So there's a lot of options. The typical DST is about 5 to 7 years in length, could be shorter, could be longer, depending on market cycle. But it's a beautiful, easy investment to do. Now, limited personal liability. The thing to understand is if you sold $1 million property anywhere in the country and the net sales proceeds are $1 million, you have to go back into $1 million in real estate, equal or greater, to defer all of your taxes. Now, you can't do a partial exchange. When you sell a property for $1 million, you buy an $800,000 property. There's a $200,000 gap of what you're not replacing. In that $200,000, that's taxable, considered boot in the accounting world. So you can do a partial exchange where you have, the $200,000 taxable, $800,000 tax deferred, but most folks want to defer the entire thing. So they go equal or greater. They sell $1 million property and they're looking for the $1 million property. Greater means you take on more leverage, buy more property. Come out of pocket with more equity, buy more property. Anything less is taxable. So where it gets tricky is when you have a mortgage. Imagine you're selling that $1 million duplex in Los Angeles, right? And you have a mortgage of $500,000 with the bank. Logically, when you sell that property, the bank gets paid their $500,000 back to them. There's $500,000 in equity that goes to the qualified intermediary, which starts that 45-day clock. That $500,000 gets wired into your up leg, your next property on the exchange. But what's the problem? You sold for $1 million, you're at $500,000, have to get back to the $1 million. Most people have to get a new loan because they don't have the money laying around to get back to the $1 million mark. You can come out of pocket, but majority of folks take out a loan from the bank. Here's what I'm trying to say. If you sold for 50% loan to value, you got to go back into 50% loan to value equal or greater. You sold out at 25% loan to value. You have to sell back at 25 equal or greater. So you got to replace your debt, which is hard for a lot of folks today getting a loan in today's environment. Now, here's the beautiful thing about the DST. The IRS realized that inland sponsors of DSTs were not big, huge mortgage companies. They can get 500 people approved for financing. Imagine getting 500 people approved for financing. How long would it take? How much would it cost? How much fees would that create for folks? So they realized that it's much easier and economic to allow inland or the sponsor of the DST. They allow us to put one loan on the property. The loan comes from us. We go to a bank, acquire the financing on the property. You're allowed to absorb our financing on paper as yours. Since it's not really your loan, it's non-recourse to you, hence the limited personal liability. It's a non-recourse loan. Plus, you don't have to qualify for financing because we're the ones putting the financing on the property, right? So you don't need a loan in a DST. It's huge. Imagine you can't qualify, don't want to qualify for it, or maybe you're retired and don't have the income to go get that kind of loan. Well, the DST world, you can use our debt as yours. And the another thing too is we have a lot of relationships, key relationships over 56 years where we can get better rates than most folks on loans at the bank, which is our debt, not yours. Now, the beautiful thing too is you don't need the financing, but we pass along the leverage to you and the interest expense from that leverage to you as well for write-off purposes. So it's a beautiful thing in DST world where you don't really have to utilize your own financing. You can use ours for that. So here's an example. An investor's relinquishing a property for $1.1 million, right? They're selling that. They're at a 45% loan to value. They're going to buy back into a DST. The replacement DST on the right-hand side is our DST. It's an inland DST. We went out and put a 48.5% loan to value on a DST property. So what this investor is doing is they're selling their 45% LTV deal, and they're going into a inland deal that is 3.5% bigger. So you're going to go from 1.1 million in investment to 1.165719. Since you're going up in leverage a little bit, 3.5%, you're going to get the extra write-off passed to you as well. And you're using our loan, not yours. So it's a beautiful way to not need financing, not have the recourse on your back and pass it on to us, right? Estate planning. So a lot of folks on this call today probably have a revocable living trust set up to give it, access to your kids upon death to avoid probate, right? In a DST, you can put the DST inside of your revocable living trust. That way, when you pass away, you're not leaving your kids with an apartment building. They're going to fight over who's going to sell it, who's going to manage it. When you're going to sell it, what you're going to leave them with is in a DST is the income stream split 2 or 3 ways, however many kids there are. And when the DST is sold, the profits are split 3 separate ways to 3 separate QI accounts, if it's done correctly. So the beauty here is you can leave your kids with a legacy without arguing with each other. And it's a really nice way to set up your estate plan. I had a financial advisor recently that did something interesting where they had husband and wife has 4 kids. They sold a $20 million property. They went into 4 different $5 million DSTs. Each kid was earmarked a $5 million DST times 4 in their revocable living trust. That way, when they pass away, each kid is earmarked income and appreciation potential from each DST that's earmarked in their revocable living trust. So keep that in mind. It's a great estate planning tool in general. The next thing is insurance policy. This is not a typical insurance policy, but it's something we came up with where the idea is this: if it's a limited inventory market like we have today, and you're selling a property, a lot of times folks are only finding one property through the realtor. But property number 2 and 3 can be a DST as a backup through your financial advisor just in case you fall out of escrow, because it's like musical chairs. Those 45 days, you can change your mind over and over and over again. Come day 46, you can't identify any new property. So if you fall out of escrow, you're out of luck. So it costs no money to identify a DST through a financial advisor as a potential replacement property. Or you can bifurcate it, put half into a DST, half into local property. So in summary, if you're looking for access to high quality properties, you want out of the management game diversification, a limited personal liability, estate planning, insurance policy for the DST, within the DST, this may be a potential solution for you. And keep in mind, remember the 45 days we talked about? Not a long time to find a property and very difficult to get the financing on these days. And remember, we bought the property in advance. We bought it in cash usually, and we added financing onto it. We did our due diligence. The bank did theirs. We file these with the SEC, and then the financial advisor community has to approve it themselves, but they take one step further. They get a third-party due diligence report done by certain companies that fly out to the properties, are impartial, and look to see if they pass the muster, if you will. So all I'm trying to say is we're not worried about the 45 days. It's pre-bought, pre-due diligenced. There's a loan done in advance. It's all ready for you to go with the bow. It's like going to a restaurant, Jeff, and saying you want a steak, you want chicken, you want fish. You decide what DST you want. Inland's not the only company. I think we're the best company out there. But feel free to reach out to me anytime, which with your financial advisor, with your realtor, whomever. If you don't have them, let me know. We can help you out. And I think my information, as Jeff is scrolling across the bottom there with my email, my phone number, my information. But I also want to leave with you my card here. It's a QR code where you can download my information very quickly. If you move some screens around, kind of like, when you do in a menu at a restaurant, you can download my contact card. My cell phone number is 424-291-0064, 424-291-0064. Love to talk to you, your financial advisor, to help see how we can help fit your needs. And one more thing too, Jeff, just a quick note is, this is only for investment property, right? For a 1031 exchange in the DST. What about everything else? The stocks, bonds, mutual funds, right? Cryptocurrency gains. You can look to something called a qualified opportunity zone fund. So usually when it's real estate, you want to look toward a 1031 exchange, but every other gain, we have a product called a qualified opportunity zone fund, which you can exchange into. And if you hold it for the 10-year mark, you can get out tax-free on the growth. And there's a lot more mechanics to it. I don't want to go into it today, but just keep in mind, we do have the opportunity zones and we have the 1031s. So for example, I got a business sell in Ontario, California. The business is valued at $80 million with the real estate, right? The $20 million, which is the business portion of the sale, which is not exchangeable, is going to go into a qualified opportunity zone fund. The $60 million, which is the real estate, is going to go into the Delaware statutory trust and some other properties, some net lease properties they found as well. So again, here's a way to really take advantage of, the tax benefits that Inland provides. You can bring your financial advisor in. We're happy to work with you, to talk to you and help consult on your specific situation. We can bring in the qualified intermediary. We're a complete solution to help you figure out what you got to do and figure out your exchange needs. So with that, Jeff, I guess we'll go to Q&A, right?
Great. Thank you so much, Charles, for sharing that with us. And just curious, a lot of people want to know, like, how are you getting paid? What's your commission, or how does that work out? And
yeah, so what makes DSTs a little bit different from typical private equity deals? In private equity, usually if a company makes you $1 in profit, that private equity company will take 20% of that, or 20 cents. DST world, we're not allowed to take the big parts of the profit on the back, right? We have to give that money back. There can be a potential disposition fee of usually around 3%, which we typically don't take. But the real money that sponsors and DSTs like Inland make is along the way. So just like you pay property managers in California, I think on average 5 to 7%, we make our money off a management fee of 3 to 4% off the gross rents, depending on the deal you go into. So the beauty is, say we quote you at a 4.5% cash on cash income net of all fees. That means if you give us $1 million, literally you're getting $45,000 a year divided by 12 monthly payments. Included in that is the management fee. So actually we're earning a little bit more than a 4.5%. And there's a reserve account, which goes to help pay for the management fees. So a piece of that goes to pay management. That way you're not paying out of pocket every month, every quarter, every year. You never strike a check. It's taken above the top and the spread. And that's our main source of income. Of course, there's some, acquisitions fees, some front end fees as well that are detailed in the prospectus, but that's the main source, is the ongoing management for us.
Great. Yeah, and I forgot to mention, guys, if you're watching on the AOAUSA.com website, there's that blue help button at the bottom right side. You can you can email, you can type in a message there, a question, and they'll get that over to me. And I see we do have a question on YouTube, and it's Amanda. We have a single unit condo. We want to buy a duplex, a piece of land on the lake to build, or another duplex. Did you say it is a max of 3 from one single unit?
Well, it's called the 3 property rule. So the IRS says that you can take one property you're selling and buy 3 new properties. If you want to go more than 3 properties, you can utilize a 200% rule, where you could go into you can double that, what your sales price is, and identify up to that. So you can go into more than 3 properties. And we're happy, if you want to reach out, I'm happy to put you in touch with a qualified intermediary that works with us all the time. They're really good at these types of issues, because this is all they deal all day long. But I'm happy to introduce you to some of the qualified intermediaries we work with that can really look at your specific situation and help advise to you how that works. So even if you're not doing a DST, we're happy to talk to you and help direct you.
All right. Thank you, Andrea, for that question. And another question that people can ask is, are they able to get out of it at any time? Or no, what's the life? We'll just ask, what's the life, the cycle? Like, how long is the cycle for this? So,
yeah. In the past, which we know past performance is not indicative of future results, but in the past, with our past 204 full cycle transactions, we know the average has been about 5 to 7 years. 6 has been the sweet spot, right? Mm-hmm. My last DST was 3 years. Our fastest DST was 18 months, right? We usually have to hold this long enough to qualify for, that we're not just flipping a property. These can go as long as 10 years, but the average is 5 to 7 years. And if there's a downside to this, we talk about the benefits, is it's a lack of liquidity, right? You really want to have a 5 to 7 year time horizon, even though it could be sooner, it could be later, to go into an exchange transaction. But also remember, you got $1 million, put $500,000 to one DST, $500,000 to another. Probability says they may not go the same year. One might go sooner, one might go later. It could ladder your investment a little bit. But lack of liquidity and a lack of control are the 2 issues within a DST. Mm-hmm. You can control what color the apartment's painted, right? Some people don't want the control. Some people that want control have 10 properties, 5 properties. Put your bottom property, the most difficult one to manage, into a Delaware statutory and get out of those tents and toilets and trash. And it's a good way to get an entryway into the DST as well.
Yeah, for our investors out there, like, you guys are identifying properties and acquiring them. And so coming into 2024, has there been any shift in what you're looking for?
Yeah. Actually, we shifted over 10 years ago. So obviously, we kind of, not that we have a crystal ball, but we had a feeling about the market. With Amazon, it's affected retail greatly, right?
Yeah.
So we stopped doing as much retail. We're a bit more worried about retail, certain asset classes in retail, right? Or parts of retail. We're also worried about office. We stopped doing office years ago, unless it's like a medical office where they have CAT scan machines. They're not going to take those around in trucks, right? So we look at things in a certain way. And we have a theory about, the silver hair tsunami of the retirement generation, which is like, they call it the pig through the python, right? Where you have this tidal wave of the majority of folks rolling through the whole economy. And what are they be looking for? Typical retiree sells their 5-bedroom house and moves into an apartment building. Why? Because they don't want to live in an assisted living facility right away. And they can call an apartment and say, fix this plumbing, fix this issue. So apartments is what we're focused on today, right? Because there's a lack of supply. A lot of people need that. Plus, it's hard to get a mortgage today. And it's, you got a lot of millennials, Gen Zers, I don't know about Gen Zs, millennials at least, and a lot of boomers that are in apartments today for that reason. And then they're going to go to retirement homes. We're buying those too, right? Assisted living facilities. But what does their stuff go? When they go to an apartment, they downsize, goes into storage, right? When they go to assisted living facility, it goes into storage. So the kids can rent out the house to pay for the assisted living facility. And a lot of folks in America, no offense, we're kind of hoarders, right? You've seen those TV shows, Hoarders, and even Storage Wars, right? And a storage facilities is beautiful because we can reset the rents every 3, 6, 12, 18 months. There's a stat, believe it or not, the average person thinks they're going to rent a storage facility for 3 to 6 months. The average person rents storage for 18 months. And you don't pay your bill, guess what? There's no tenant to evict like we dealt in the apartment world. It was really difficult in California, especially. You cut a lock, you auction the property, and you get your back rents, right? So it's really easy to do. You see it on Storage Wars. So storage, we call it the alternative asset classes of real estate because the core four in the past were retail, office, industrial, multifamily. Today, it's going to be storage. It's going to be apartments. It's going to be assisted living facilities. We even do some student housing off campus at Tier 1 universities. I guess sensitive subject today, but we do have those, and that's been trending up on the growth as well. But we try to stay away from asset classes that are unpredictable, suburban office, some areas of retail. And in fact, we have investments where we look at taking those office buildings and those old retail centers and turning them into storage facilities. So that's a different type of investment. But give you the idea, this is what we're focused on because we don't have a crystal ball, but we've been doing this for the last 10 years.
Cool. All right. We have Ed on YouTube. If I come in during the life cycle, if I come at about 2 years, can I get out? Can I get out in only the balance of the cycle?
So I would say no. And I know what you're asking because a lot of people, when they think about DSTs, think about a mutual fund. Now, a mutual fund is like open-ended, right? Which means they're always buying assets and liquidating assets. It's an open-ended investment. The DST is a closed-ended fund. So imagine we bought 5 apartment buildings in Florida in a DST. So those 5 apartment buildings, maybe they total $250 million, in equity. What happens as soon as is Jeff, your 10 million, my million, someone else's, 500,000 times 500 people comes in, and we fill up that $250 million in equity of those 5 apartments in Florida, that DST closes. Right. New investments. It sets sail for the next 5 to 7 years on average. And then, so you really can't come in the middle of it and try to get out towards the end. I would say if you're looking for a shorter term horizon, there's another vehicle called the 721 exchange, which you got to hold on for 3 years. You got liquidity after. I think it kind of stifles your growth, but it's more of a stabilized NAV where you get out on a monthly basis. But again, your exchange journey ends in this type of investment. So that's another seminar on the 721s. Maybe we should do one of those in the future or kind of combine it in. But again, we have DST, 1031, we have the 721 exchanges. For a lot of folks, I think the majority of folks, they find a DST is the best investment for them because it gives them optionality to exchange back in another property. Because at the end of 5 to 7 years, let's say you had $1 million, and hypothetically, just make this up, Jeff, you made 20% on the growth. So your million is now 1.2 million. Those funds go back to the qualified intermediary, starts the clock at 45 days. You go back into real estate locally, back into a DST. You can cash out or all the above. And the 721 side, you have liquidity after 3 years, but as soon as you cash out, it's over with, right? You're paying the taxes and you're on the road. So there's different ways of doing this. I know I didn't say a lot on 721. If you want more information, we're happy to talk to you. Just reach out and we'll help put you in touch with the right folks.
Great. And then Ed also asked, just to follow up, is the life cycle set at initiation or is it just decided on? So maybe the exit part of it. Yeah,
there's no sunset clause, as we call it in the business, where there's no date that we're going to liquidate on this date because who knows if it's January 2020 or it's 08 to 09, right? Where it could be a difficult time to do this. So when you come into the DST, it's we have an idea of time frame of maybe 5 to 7 years. Could go longer, could go faster. Heck, COVID sped up a lot of some of the DSTs at the time, right? It went quicker. Elongated market with a bad economy could make them go longer. So it really depends on the situation. But there's certain asset classes that go a little faster. We've noticed apartments have gone a little faster than certain other asset classes. But it depends what you go into. But we don't know what the future holds. So you just got to, we can consult you, give you some ideas. But, the future is the future, right?
Great. And I know that you guys do events regularly. Do you have... Where are you showing up next?
Actually, today. Okay. I'm actually in Manhattan Beach. If you're in Manhattan Beach, California, that's where I live. at the Tin Roof Bistro. It's off Sepulveda.
Okay. How
It's
about
in that Manhattan Village, the little mall out there. I guess you call it. And
Nice.
we have one at 11:30 today. You're welcome to show up if you like. If you're in Manhattan Beach in the South Bay, just come on out to the Tin Roof Bistro. We have the whole thing rented out. But we do these in San Diego every month. We have an event. It's open to the public. San Diego, it's usually at Ruth's Chris in Del Mar. We do one at Ocean Prime in Beverly Hills.
Mhm.
South Coast Plaza. We do one at Capitol Grill. Fleming's in Pasadena. Paul Martin's up in Thousand Oaks, Westlake Village area, and then Santa Barbara as well, and
So
Hawaii.
do you have a calendar, or how would people find out about that? Some people, they really do want to meet people in person and everything.
Yeah, we have a calendar, and we can send this out to you. The best thing to do is reach out again to this
Okay.
phone number, text call, email cjensen, CJENSEN at inland-securities.com. Ask for the calendar of events. Happy to send it to you. No pressure. It's just educational events. We don't discuss products. It's purely open to the public to learn about these DSTs. We get realtors that show up. We get investors, accountants, estate planning attorneys, you name it. So we're happy to work with you, help you to educate you to make the best decision possible. Bring your financial advisor too.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. So important. It's all these things, these considerations have to be made before you sell. So
yeah,
definitely great advice there, Charles. Thank you so much for your time. And thanks everybody for joining in on this one. And hopefully we'll see some of you at 12:30. Maybe Charles will see some of you at 11:30.
Yeah.
And we'll see you. Yeah, I'll see you shortly. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thanks.